This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. This is our first post-game show of the season. Aaron, Quinn, how are we feeling?
Amazing. 1-0. It sounded better when I wrote it out on Facebook with the one being W-O-N. But anyway, Bills are 1-0, and they did it in dominant fashion, so I'm excited to talk to you about that. I'm sure Twitter's buzzing with some of the things that weren't so dominant, but I'm off. You'll have to read me the tweets later in the show.
Yeah, it's, we'll get into it. It wasn't a perfect game by any means, but I want people to step back. The Bills just won a 27-17 win where they were never in doubt at any point throughout the game. They were never not up 2 scores at any point that mattered throughout the game. It was, the closest they got was pulling it back within like 11. And then even then the Bills had the ball and were moving. So not a perfect game. And I'll even make the point, this is a perfect Sean McDermott game because he gets a double-digit comfortable victory and lots of stuff to grind their gears in the film breakdown to give him a hard time for the growth mindset. So this is a Sean McDermott special.
And Ron Beck here, I'll put it up for you. Ron Beck saying should have won 45-10. And we were saying that right before the show offline here, that the score is not indicative of the actual game. If you didn't watch the game and just saw the box score, you'd say, wow, that game got close. But it was really, Bills had a 40-point game offensively, and they should have held them to 10 points. There was a little bit of a garbage one at the end there. So sometimes the final score and the stats aren't always indicative of the dominant performance that you're seeing. And that's what we saw from the Bills today. But you're right. I think there was enough for Sean to not let these guys get too cocky here this week and still grind them in the film room a little bit.
Well, and I got into it with a couple people on Twitter, and I'm already getting comments here about Brian Daboll. And I just want to make sure to reinforce, Brian Daboll did not call the, hey, go fumble the ball play. Brian Daboll did not call the, hey, go miss the field goal. He had every single drive was a scoring drive except for one. They had one punt on the day. He called scoring drive territory drives, every single drive except for one. If execution is better, and we don't give him any benefit of the doubt, you get the 2 missed field goals on the 2 fumbles. Let's give him 1 touchdown, 1 field goal. That's 43. It's 43-17. And if we don't lose 4 linebackers during the game, they don't score 17 points. So it's, I'm glad that it was an easy, comfortable win. They could have done better, but come on.
I'm not going to deal with the Brian Daboll. Hey, we'll get into some of our sponsorship stuff here in a second. I almost created a Twitter account because I know people are probably crapping on Brian Daboll during the game because of the fumbles. I'm ready and willing to defend Brian Daboll. So if you want to come talk about it in Slack or over on Facebook somewhere, I'm ready to defend Brian Daboll because I thought he had a fantastic day today.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that they went at the strengths they stayed away from the strengths. They went at the weaknesses. The Jets had a terrible secondary and linebacker core. You could tell the Jets have a really good defensive line. Their D-line was tough to run on all day. Steve McClendon is legit. Quinn Williams is real. Henry Anderson's a cheap, terrible person, but he's a good defensive lineman. The pieces that they needed to do, we weren't going to run the ball down their throats all day. That just wasn't that kind of game. Right. And they went at it smart. They passed the ball all the time. Josh Allen shattered every career record that he had for attempts, completions, yards, everything. He had we'll get to it, his first 300-yard game. They played great. He didn't give up a ton of ugly sacks. He only lost 6 yards in total sack yardage. This was a nice game. And if they execute a little bit better, it's a blowout and a huge offensive production, but it was still a very good, well-called game.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And that's where it came down to his execution. And the coach is somewhat responsible for execution, but that all happens in training camp. The coach can't go out there and actually execute, hold on to the ball, do these things. So we'll get more into it. I'll let you to get some of the reads and stuff here before we get too excited and get into some of the, nuts and bolts of this game.
Yeah, really excited. Again, another great season presented by Uncle Jumbo's, and Uncle Jumbo's is definitely well-deserved today. You had him at both ends of the spectrum. You were able to probably need a drink at one point when it started to slow down, and also lots of celebratory beverages. So make sure you're heading out, grab some good stuff from Uncle Jumbo's. I'm excited. I'm going to go out and meet them this week. So going to go out and get to see the distillery and some of the stuff going on. That's going to be a lot of fun. And it's something that you want to make sure that you can enjoy responsibly. We'll get to a little bit later in the show here. I know you and I talk a lot about toxic differential, and it's interesting. Today wasn't necessarily the biggest indicator, but it did show how it can get a team back into the game, because if you look at what this should have been a blowout, it wasn't. because the Jets had multiple turnovers in their favor, only counting the 2 real turnovers. If you count the 2 missed field goals, it could have been 2 more. We had the Bills barely edging them out in toxic differential 6-5, and that's not counting 2 missed field goals, but that long touchdown that they had and the 2 turnovers is what kept them in the game.
Yeah, exactly. And really, when you look at the Jets scoring, it's the 69-yard touchdown, like you said, and then the late pass interference, which was a ticky-tack. I think Levi Wallace had a really nice day today, and that was a bad call against Levi Wallace, but still puts him on the 1, and that's how they score. So toxic differential does matter. I think when you talk about, we'll talk probably quite a bit about a 300-yard passing day, really not an indicator of success when it comes to wins, and I'll die on that hill every single day. There's very few stats that people come out there, and it's something I want to track more often here throughout the year, because I think toxic differential really is an indicator. It doesn't mean you're going to win every time, but I think if you win that column, you're more likely to win than not. And even when it edges out in a close game like this, we've been tracking it here for a couple of years, and sometimes it is close, but usually the person that comes out on top of that does end up winning the ball game.
Another high-level topic, I'll take my medicine. Tyler Bass had a really rough start today. I think he got boned on the 1. I think the 1 was good, but it missed it. The other one, we saw a little bit of pictures. It looks like the laces were in, had a Finkel issue going on there, but missed his first 2 field goals, came back and made the other ones, made the 3 extra points, looked good on kickoffs, but certainly maybe a little tight throat for the rookie here in his first game. Hopefully he settled down and made his final kicks there and can ease into it. But I wouldn't be shocked if we hear maybe a Chase McLaughlin claim or a Steven Hauschka return to be able to get going there. Just a little rough.
Dude, this was a little bit of my worst nightmare, because I told you this is not what the conversations that I wanted to have all season long. And here we are, week 1, and it is something we have to talk about. I agree that first one probably was good, but the fact that it was even that close on a 38-yard field goal, these are the things that the consistencies what in the kicking and punting game we need to see. Your boy Borges was pretty consistent today, but one punt is easy to be consistent.
53 yards, great hang time, no return. It's perfect. He's the number 1 punter in the NFL right now. This is
that's the kind of punting days he needs for that consistency we want. But yeah, I just want consistency from the kicker. He has the big leg. He almost needs to calm it down a little bit, like Josh Allen needs to calm down the arm sometimes. But I don't want to keep going week in to week out. So I hope this gets corrected here throughout the week, because I don't want to have another conversation with you about inconsistent kicking.
And I'll say, for anybody who's going to go through the idea of, hey, cut him, that's not going to be that first move. That's not going to be what they do here. I will say bringing in another kicker for a tryout maybe sends a little bit of a message of, hey, you can't keep this up. But that's not how you make that kind of, knee-jerk reaction. He missed 2 field goals. That's not okay. He made the other 2. He made the 3 extra points. He probably was 3 of 4 for field goal. And if he is 3 of 4 and it's just 1 miss, we're probably not really talking about it that much. So it's something that I think it gained some momentum because it was the first 2 and people are like, oh, here we go. But I'm going to reserve judgment. As long as he cleans it up, keeps it decent the rest of the way, and we get that 80% we were getting from Hauschka plus great kickoffs into the wind, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has plenty of time to correct it. And I do think they'll be careful with his confidence and with his head, because it's entirely mental as a kicker. I've heard Pat McAfee talk about special teams and kicking, and it's totally mental. And I think they want to be careful with a rookie. So maybe have a guy in for a trial. But yeah, I don't think they're going to push. I definitely don't think he's going to get cut. And I do think he'll correct it. I do think he's a good kicker. And again, I hope he does, because I don't want to talk about it every week.
One last opening thought here before we get into some of the main segments for the show. If anything, there's something to be concerned about. It's that our linebacker depth is going to be really tested early on. Matt Milano with a hammy didn't seem super serious. He was a little lobbying, trying to come back in. That, they're pretty conservative with those. You saw them hold out Vernon Butler. You saw them hold out Josh Norman. So obviously they're pretty careful with that. We saw the same thing with Taron Johnson and Devin Singletary last year, where they looked like they were ready to come back and it stretched on. So don't be shocked if you see Matt Milano out 2 or 3 more games. It could be 2, the next week 2 and week 3. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see him till the Rams in week 4. We don't know anything about Tremaine Edmonds other than a shoulder right now, and that he had a test done in the blue tent that involved him taking the shoulder pads off. I'm a little bit nervous. It was a collarbone. He went back to the locker room. We don't know anything right now. Obviously, we'll all be scouring Twitter trying to see what the latest update is. Then we also saw Terrell Dodson attended to and Delshon Phillips come out of the game. So I don't think that we probably give up that late score if we have the starting defense in there. That's rough when you're getting to your fifth and sixth linebackers and people like that. So, you brought it up pre-show. You saw Darren Lee come in for a workout. Maybe they call back Voshon Joseph. Maybe they call back Corey Thompson. They're probably going to need some bodies here for a short period of time, and then we'll all just cross our fingers there's nothing long-term with Edmonds and Milano.
Yeah, as long as it's not long term, I think that the Bills might be able to get through those injuries. It's definitely not ideal to have that happen in a dominating win. You hate to see guys like that go out so early, but that's going to be kind of part of it. I think that you're going to see some of this league wide of not having preseason, not having contact, and this does happen. Teams are going to have guys go out. So I think of any of the Bills teams I've seen and throughout the years, the continuity, we keep talking about the leadership that they have and bringing guys back. And they have probably the best linebacker coach in the business. So if anyone's able to brace a catastrophic thing like losing your two starting linebackers, maybe it's this team, but definitely not good news for the Bills in an otherwise fantastic kickoff weekend. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And you'll have to keep me posted because I'm not on Twitter. This is going to be one of the tough things about being off of Twitter is injury news, things like that. So you'll have to keep me updated on how that looks throughout the week here.
Absolutely. We'll jump right into our first sponsor segment of the show. So Uncle Jumbo's responsible play of the game. And this one, I think, is going to be a little unpopular, but it's something that I always see just with the math of the game of how it works. I actually went with the late game field goal. I know that they had a fourth down at the 1 yard line, and it's a lot more fun to go for it in those situations. But when you have a chance to go up 3 scores, at that point you're up 14, and a field goal puts you up 3 scores and really just ends the game. And I know it's more fun to go for it on fourth down, but that's actually the more responsible play. And you saw that, McDermott was obviously leaning into the game theory analytics part of that. We went for it on fourth down multiple times. He's going and taking heavily into account what has the greatest potential impact on your win percentage and your likelihood to win. And just like he went for it when we were up 14-0 with a 4th and 4 inside their territory, that was the smart play because you had a higher likelihood there and increasing your odds to win, and kicking the field goal down there, even though it's at the 1-2 yard line, and it sounds like it's more fun to have Josh try to dive over the pile. Going for it to put it up 17 points is the responsible play of the game. So just like when you're enjoying Uncle Jumbo's, you got to make responsible decisions. That was actually the smarter decision, even though it might not have been as fun.
Yeah, and these segments are going to sound kind of lame, I think, today, because I think we'll probably agree across the board on a lot of this, because during a blowout game, there isn't a lot of opportunities for strategic errors really to come into play. So you have very few of these. Are they going to go for it or not? And it is the right play to make. I do want to see Josh Allen because I don't think he can be stopped. We finally have a quarterback. For years, you had Tyrod Taylor, and they never seemed to give him a quarterback sneak. And he's not a big guy. And just for years, you would see Tom Brady always picking up QB sneaks in the on the goal line or for fourth and 1. And now we have the guy that I feel confident can always, if it's 4th and 1 or 4th and goal, he can get it every time. So part of me wants to see that the fan, but the smart thing to do is what Sean McDermott did and take that 3-point or that 3-score lead and win the football game.
So now we're finally into the fun topic for today. And it's one of those things that has been out there that you and I have talked about for a while, that it was just a statistical milestone. It doesn't really matter. I can't lie. I'm really happy that Josh Allen opened the season with a 300-yard game to get it off his back. Before we dive in, just to let you guys know, Josh went 33 of 46, both career highs in completions and attempts, 71% plus completion percentage for 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He added another 57 yards rushing and a touchdown with 14 carries, which we might get to that in a minute. Maybe that was a little higher than it should have been. But 33 of 46 for 312 and 2 touchdowns. It's tough to find a lot of flaws in that, Aaron.
Yeah, no, he had a great day. This was a for him to have a day like that. This Jets secondary, not very good. The Bills totally outmatched them across the board, wide receiver wise. So definitely a great day, great setup for it. But I'm just happy they got it out of the way early because I don't want to hear it all over the radio every single day. I don't want to. I'm not on Twitter, but I guarantee you that was probably all over Twitter this morning about these style points and meeting certain criteria. I ran through the numbers last year. It's a coin toss when your quarterback throws for a 300-yard game, whether or not your team wins. It's not a statistical indicator of winning football games. So I'm glad they did it. I'm glad that narrative can now get laid to rest. He still needs to hit some more of the 20 air yard ones. I'm sure that will still come up over the next couple of weeks. If he doesn't hit a gigantic long ball touchdown, we'll start hearing that one again. Will come out of nowhere. But it's good to at least one of these Josh Allen narratives has gone to bed. There's another one that we'll probably hear this week with that John Brown miss. We'll probably see that. You'll probably see that a lot on Twitter. And that makes
there were already Bills haters out there. Michael Kiss already has it out there. It's already out there. Literally
thankful.
The one play.
I wonder how the Eagles did today. So ask Michael about that. See, I got to get back on Twitter, man. They just come to me so good. I'm really happy for Josh. I'm happy for Brian Daboll. Get that one out of the way and let's move forward and not have to talk about it every week.
So on the downside for Josh today, the 2 fumbles are just unacceptable, and I get it. Some people, I don't think that's on Brian Daboll, but I'll say 14 carries is more than I'd like to see. I don't think that's there, and maybe 3 or 4 of those were scrambles. I would say that was 8 or 9 or 10 called runs. 10 called runs is more than I think is necessary. And I get it if you're playing a really stout run defense that you're trying to catch on play action. A couple of them were really good where he walked in for a touchdown on that beautiful play action bootleg. Some of those were really nice, but the one fumble was on the 3rd straight run. Is that a little something that he got a little tired or worked up? The other one, he gets upended and it lands on his head and initially grabbed at his knee. I get it that a huge part of his value is his rushing ability. You cannot take that away. I think you can get him out there on bootlegs and out there on waggles and let him throw the ball from there, but threaten the defense with it and run the ball 4 to 5 times a game. 10 was a little more than I was hoping for.
I'm going to get a little into semantics. I like the range. 5 to 7 is kind of the range I would like to see on average for the year. But if you're going to have that average, you're going to have some games like this where I think the matchup did play well to him doing that. And Brian Daboll had success outside of the fumbles. That was moving the chains. That was keeping the Bills moving the chains. And it was making the defense respect that. And you saw that was a threat on a couple of the pass plays where he did roll out and the defense came up, opening up wide receivers. So that threat does play to some of the strategy that allows Josh to be dynamic. You saw it in the Texans game. That was some of the best offense we had in the playoff game against the Texans was Josh Allen running some of those design QB runs. So I'm not on board with the people that want to get rid of that completely. And I'm a little closer to you. I do want to see it drop down, but I'm fine if he kind of caps off around that 5 to 7 designed run range. But if it's working, man, I don't know. You keep going to stuff that's working. It's on Josh. Josh has to protect the football, and Daboll maybe needs to get better and not do it 3 times in a row, or if Josh is getting tired. As far as protecting the quarterback, I do get that too. You don't want to see Josh take hits. I'm of the mindset injuries happen in football and that you can't you definitely want to protect the quarterback, but he's going to take hits. He takes hits in the pocket. He takes hits places. A lot of QB injuries happen in the pocket, blindside injuries and stuff like that. So I don't want to be overprotective with him either and eliminate what makes him a really fantastic prospect. He's a super athletic guy. One of the scrambles, which wasn't a design run, where he tiptoes the sideline for the first down, man, it doesn't always look like the most athletic thing in the world, but it's incredibly athletic.
How quick he moves at his size is what's special.
And it's what makes him special. And so I do want to keep an element of it, maybe dial it back a little bit, but I'm not going to get on Brian Daboll for the performance that he had today. And I thought he used Josh Allen really well, and it kept the Jets off balance. They did not know how to stop it. The fumbles were the only thing that stopped it.
And I'll say, I heard a lot of people talking about taking their foot off the gas, getting conservative. And I get it that they scored 21 in the first half and 6 in the second half. And on face value, that looks like it. But I mean, this team called 50 pass plays to 28 rush plays. Yeah. That wasn't dramatically different in the second half. They kept passing the ball. Josh had a stretch where he had a couple passes that came weirdly short. He had a stretch where he had multiple batted down at the line of scrimmage. he gave
a couple back-to-back drives with third down sacks.
Yes, yeah, where we gave up some pressure, and then a couple misses. That Cole Beasley long play that was 29 yards probably should have been a walk-in touchdown, and he had the John Brown miss in the end zone where it was a gimme touchdown. So definitely, it's kind of fun that Josh Allen had his best career passing game, and we can pick out a good handful of things he still needs to improve. Yep. That's really exciting from a development standpoint, that he can hit career highs in multiple different areas and leave plenty of meat on the bone that he can get better.
Oh, he definitely left some stuff out on the field today, and he'll be the first one to. I'm sure in the post game, he'll be the first one to talk about that, because there's that Beasley one is going to haunt him. That's one of those ones as an athlete, if you've played in sports, where you have nightmares about that the rest of the week because you had that in your hands. This conversation's come up quite a bit with Sean McDermott teams, and it's something that we talked about extensively in the Slack channel here before the season started, where people said, oh, they gave up or they got conservative on this game. I think that's another one of these narratives that's out there, because if you go back in any of these games, you think that the Bills got conservative and look at the play breakdowns, they didn't really change. Like, you might see 60-40 passing and 40-60, but it doesn't change that much.
The second half, they opened it 6 passes and 2 runs.
Yes, and it's the thing that I've seen when watching it back, not just looking at the play-by-plays, watching it back, it's an execution issue. And we've seen them come out to start games and not execute well. And what I saw in the start of the second half was just an execution issue coming out of the half, not executing well. And I don't think anybody took their foot off of anything. I think that they kept to a game plan that they wanted. You saw less of the design runs of Josh Allen. I don't think that was them taking their foot off anything. That was Sean McDermott telling them, look, we can't give it to him anymore doing this. He's got to keep his hands on the ball. But no, I think that that's a narrative that I haven't found any truth to anywhere, either in the stats or in the film. So I don't know where. I think people need to just watch the execution side of that when they see, if they think the Bills are taking the foot off the gas, look at really what's happening. It's drop passes, missed passes, and giving up sacks.
Yeah, and I think Tommy makes a good point here. His mechanics got away from him a little bit at times, and that was a huge topic for us. Was that, hey, he drilled it so much, he was able to go in and put together so much work with Jordan Palmer in the offseason, and I think that it, obviously, I think he started 7 of 7 and ended up again 71% completion percentage. It was a really nice game.
Great game.
But you can tell that there are times when he gets a little frantic. He had a couple of those plays while scrambling where if he stops and sets his feet, he probably has either another one early in the game where he probably could have set Beasley up a little bit better, had another one earlier in the game where John Brown might have been able to score if he sets his feet, that we end up going through there. Now that early one, they still scored anyway, so it ended up all right, but on the bootleg. But yeah, I think that those mechanics still need to get into muscle memory to where when it's frantic and breaking down, that you can still sit down and be able to collect on that. And I think that would be huge.
Josh Allen's, I don't think he's ever going to not make some of these plays that drive us nuts. It's the Josh Allen experience. You take some of the good with the bad. I don't think he'll ever be a perfect guy that makes the perfect. He's not going to be a Tom Brady. He's going to wow you with some athleticism. He's going to wow you with his arms at times. And what comes with that is some of the opposite of wow plays, the plays that you just shake in your head. It's going to happen. I think he eliminated a lot of it. What I didn't see a lot was when he was getting pressure. We didn't see him turning his back and running the other way or trying to force plays in that sense. He forced one in the red zone that I thought probably could have turned into a pick. So exactly. Pat is saying it. We didn't see a lot of the hero ball stuff. We also saw some of the improvements. We saw a nice touch, that pass to Diggs, that 22-yard pass to Diggs, had nice touch on it, put it out perfectly for Diggs. We saw him check down a few times to start the game, to just take the check down, take what the defense gives him. So those things are improvements. And if that continues to build throughout the season, I think you'll see closer to other 300-yard games and continued improvement from Josh. And really, at the end of the day, that's what we all talked about preseason here, is if he makes just a little bit of improvement and this defense stays as good as they are and Stephon Diggs is as good as advertised, which he definitely is, this team can be a 12-win team. So they showed all the things that we needed to see from them today to indicate that excitement is a real thing.
So, and for anyone who isn't noticing, check out Aaron and I really enjoying our new mugs from Playbook Products. They're killer. We both got ones from the 90s AFC Championship runs. They're really nice. So check out the link that we have for those.
And they have the play on the back of them, which is pretty cool too. It's very cover one to have the play written out. When they talked to us, I was like, man, this is like a perfect fit.
Oh,
I really appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Corn, you're very kind, man. That's awesome, and really appreciate you guys.
Thank you, man.
Being able to go in to this kind of game brings us to our next segment. And that's really taking a look at, the West Her Automotive Group, really appreciative of theirs. And the West Her drive of the game is something that we're going to talk about throughout the season in these post-game shows. And, for today's game, this was probably the high point of the game. You're looking right at the beginning of the second quarter. The Bills get the ball to start it out. They're at their own 32. The Bills go on a 14-play, 68-yard touchdown drive to go up 21-0. It was 11 passes and 3 runs. It was 6 different offensive players touching the ball, multiple to John Brown, multiple to Stephon Diggs. It ends with the 17-yard touchdown pass to John Brown where he basically walked in because they called it perfectly on a well-timed kind of blitz option route to get it over to Brown in the middle, and it was just wide open, emptied from where the safety blitzed right from. And it was probably the best play call series from Brian Daboll and probably the high point of the game today. At that point, you're sitting there with 6 minutes left in the game. That's where that graphic came up of where the Bills had 160 some total yards and the Jets had 4 total yards. It was pretty perfect in the way that they had it set up. And that was the West Her drive of the game for me. It was just so phenomenal to see them just pound away at that team, 14 plays, 8-minute drive, and just take the life right out of them.
Yeah, and I agree that it was the drive of the game, and I think it's not even close. It was just a well-executed drive, even to that touchdown, seeing Diggs come across and make that block and seal it off, and that's great to see out of a star wide receiver because it's been talked about with Diggs. Guys come in and they can take some time, they don't have to put in the work and stuff like that. To see a guy that's considered a star in the league come out and lay a block like that and put his body on the line for a play, love to see it. That was also the drive where they went for it on 4th down.
Yeah.
Which again, I know
14-0.
Yeah, and that's something that Sean McDermott was criticized for in his first year, being overly conservative with that. And like you alluded to earlier in the show, taking in some of the analytics that is out there for this team and out there in the league and using that and saying, hey, this is the time to do that and to make that call. And it was also at that point in the game, another dominant statistic. They were up 15-1 in first downs at that point. So they were just moving the ball on this team. So that's dominating performance. And it was an indicator that this team might be a little bit different than these Buffalo Bills offenses we've seen in the past. Because I'm not going to lie, you kind of think, all right, the Bills are going to kind of stall out, maybe end up this drive with a field goal, but they didn't. They put it away, and that was just enough to put it out of reach, even with some of the mistakes that came later on.
Yeah. And it was, the kind of game where, that really felt like we could have been onto something special or even historic where they were starting to roll and everything like that. And again, this was the first game with no preseason, really minimal training camp, only 14 padded practices. So it was probably a little fool's gold to assume that you were going to get something quite to that degree. And I'll say across the board, you didn't see a whole lot of that out there. There was probably one blowout on the game. Looks like the Ravens took it to the Browns pretty good. Otherwise, the Bills had the next largest point differential. So it was something where they took care of a team that obviously I don't expect a lot from the Jets this year, but we'll see where that goes. And they got the W when it mattered. So, stepping back, let's take a look at a couple of the other things from a box score standpoint. I don't think we expected a whole lot from the rushing game today against this Jets defense, but 18 carries for 41 yards out of Singletary and Moss is a little less than I was hoping for.
Yeah, a little frustrating. That's one that is hard for me, at least, to watch in the broadcast. I even struggle watching film of offensive line when I'm breaking down film. It takes a long time to really find out what goes wrong. My first gut instinct after the game is that maybe in this offseason with everything that they had to face, no preseason, really limited contact, that it might have been easier for the offense to establish passing. It's easier to run passing drills, and with no contact in scrimmage, we saw a lot of passing out of the offense, or heard reports that it was a high passing scrimmage, that there wasn't a lot of contact in the run game. And maybe that had something to do with some of the struggles, and add in that that is the strength of the Jets, and their interior line wasn't banged up and still still probably the best part of their team as a unit. So played to their strength, and maybe to early in the season with no preseason and stuff like that for the line to really get into that contact of what it takes to execute a run game at a high level. So I'm hoping that it turns around. We saw Singletary break off a couple nice ones that were vintage Singletary last year. So I think it's a matter of a sophomore slump for Singletary. I think it's just getting that unit and that part of the game going. That might take a couple weeks here in an odd 2020 year.
Yeah. This kind of game, when you have career highs in pass attempts and completions from Josh Allen, the receiving game was really nice. So Stephon Diggs, 8 for 86, John Brown, 4 for 70, Cole Beasley, 4 for 58. Devin Singletary had 5 out of the backfield. We had multiple catches from Dawson Knox, Isaiah McKenzie, Zach Moss, and Gabe Davis. So, having 8 different receivers have multiple catches is not something we're used to, and not something we've seen in the Josh Allen era. So that kind of game I really loved. John Brown did not back down from that primary role at all. I think Stephon Diggs made a couple special plays today that you could tell what an unbelievable talent he is. But you can tell this is something that also took defensive attention away and is going to allow John Brown to continue to produce, and he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, no. Anyone that was actually serious about John Brown trades, first of all, I'm sorry that you think that way about football. He's going to be a big part of this offense this year. And if they can get even close to that, I don't expect them to come out every single week and all the receivers have the same type of production that we saw here. Even in the Slack channel, people are saying, let's feed Diggs more. And I look down at this, and he's got like 6 catches at that time. I'm like, feed him more. I mean, geez. If he's getting 8 catches a game, that's going to be a really nice season for him. And the thing that stood out to me was Beasley had that one screen that he dropped, but was there any really drops in the game, or maybe a couple that we saw, but nothing compared to what we saw last year?
That was the only one that was an obvious one.
Yeah, I'm sure something will come out on PFF later in the week that there were drops, but really consistent. And some of the catches Stephon Diggs made, he didn't make any crazy wow touchdown plays, but some of those catches where he was sliding in, catching the ball, that's just stuff we haven't seen here in Buffalo with the quarterback in a long time. So very exciting. Like Liam said, and I put it up there, Stephon Diggs as advertised, and I cannot wait to see what type of highlights they put together this year, because that was a nice way to roll him out this year and get him some touches. And then, like you said, John Brown not backing down from the production that he had a year ago. And if the two of them can produce like that, man, that's going to be long days for defenses.
There's also, Pat makes a good point here. You're going to have a pretty big shift. The Dolphins have a pretty good passing defense, but today the Patriots ran pretty well on them. And we're going to find out next week how much of it was the Bills' offensive line still needing to gel and still needing to come together. How much of it was that the Jets just have a really good defensive line. We're going to find that out next week pretty well, I think, and that it's going to be something where that'll tell us more. The Patriots ran for 217 yards on them today. So
I'd love to do that.
That would be an exciting way to approach that. And, talking about dominant offensive performances, some of the total stats here are pretty fantastic. 400 total yards. Haven't seen that in a while. We had 300 passing and 100 rushing. And the time of possession was 41-18. 41 minutes and 16 seconds out of a 60-minute game is a dominant performance. The Bills just had the ball the entire game, and to run that many more plays than the other team, 81-53 is a pretty dominant performance here today. Yeah,
and don't confuse. I think time of possession often gets confused with conservative play calling, because the clock does run when you're running the ball, but the clock also runs when you're just moving the chains and you're keeping the ball in bounds and moving the chains. And we talked about that drive, the 68-yard drive, and the 3 drives leading up to it. They had a lot of long drives, and even on the missed field goals, the drives that we didn't, those were close. They didn't have fantastic field position all day. They had a couple where they had good field position, but we
were in the red zone 8 times.
Yeah, and they were nice sustained long drives where they were chipping away 5-10 yards at a time. We looked at the toxic differential, not a ton of huge plays generated by the offensive 20 yards or more. So there's other ways to get time of possession without it necessarily being conservative. And that's what we saw today, was a dominating offensive performance and then dominating that time of possession, which is a great formula for victory.
Yeah, I'd say anything to look for on the improvement side probably is that red zone percentage. 3 touchdowns out of 8 trips. You'd like to see a little bit better than that percentage. percentage there, but 8 trips into the red zone is crazy. That should have been, again, multiple more points. You had the 2 missed field goals and the 2 fumbles that cost us there. Then you get into penalties were okay today. The Jets had 9 for 95, but the Bills had 7 for 80. There weren't a lot of really painful ones. Like you said, the Levi Wallace one that led to the score in the end zone was pretty ticky-tack. Yeah. There were a couple, if face masks are going to happen, those are not things that you can really avoid all that much. There weren't a ton of pre-snap penalties. Most of them were in the game.
One that I can think of.
Yeah, so it's not. Yeah, I think there was a false start on Cody Ford. So 1 pre-snap penalty, not anything too egregious, but 7 is more than what you'd like to see. So when we're nitpicking stuff like that, and that hey, we should have converted more of the 8 red zone trips, or that I don't think we had anything, or the only really impactful penalty was on a kind of ticky-tack poor call in the end zone. You could tell that we're really stretching for things to hold them accountable for.
And I'm sure. Once we get the all 22 and Eric has a chance to break down the film, there's going to be stuff for sure that this team needs to work on. But from this first glance, you're going to have to look pretty hard for some of the stuff. And I agree with you. It's in the red zone. You want to convert more. I'm a fan of just getting whatever points we can. And I know people hate that, to take the 3 points. So if Bass, your boy Bass, doesn't miss those kicks, I'm a little bit less upset about the way they performed in the red zone today and just getting some points on the board. But I think all the things that happened in the red zone were self-inflicted and easier to fix than maybe the other team just was better than us. So as tough as that is to swallow sometimes, self-inflicted ones, those are things that you can fix. And it's not that you're getting outplayed in the red zone. Is you made mistakes. And I think they're all fixable mistakes. And I do expect that to improve as the year goes on, because the plays were there to be made. They left it on the field and they could have put 40 on the board.
Yeah. And it's that's the worst thing you missed on Twitter, was that there was a complete narrative going on, one of them by a friend of ours, who was driving this bus that the Bills had to blow them out and had to put up 40 points or else it was a failure, to the point where someone said that they would rather have a high-scoring loss than a low-scoring win. And that's asinine. To say that there's any scenario where you would rather have a loss, regardless of points scored or offensive production, than a win is crazy. So you missed that, and I'm happy for you that you didn't have to watch people try to explain why a high-scoring loss was better than a low-scoring win.
People took his side on that?
Yeah, he wasn't completely alone.
Oh man, he's a friend of mine, and I was texting with him while he was saying it today on the airwaves. And I told him he needs to drink some more coffee and relax a little bit, because that's nonsense. I love him. He's just trying to stir you guys up. Yeah. That's crazy talk. I'll always take the win. I don't care if they're ugly. Style points is ridiculous. It only benefits the fans. Yeah. At the end of the year, you don't get extra points at the end of the year for style points. Like, oh, well, they blew out the Jets. They scored 40. We're going to give them an extra half win and they get home field advantage. That's not the way this works. A win is a win. Yes. Do I want my team to blow the other team out every week? Yeah, absolutely. Do I want them to look like the Kansas City Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions? Oh, yeah, of course. It's not going to be like that. And that's okay. They came away with a decisive win. I don't care where the points were there. They have some stuff to clean up. They can get it. Yeah, that stuff's crazy. The other thing I think I probably missed on Twitter, that I'd heard rumblings was happening on Twitter, was people being mad that AJ Epinesa was a healthy scratch, which I just assumed, like, this first month of football he might not get, because the defensive line's so deep and Daryl Johnson's such a part of the special teams units that he might not see the field for a month, and that's okay. I'm not mad about that.
Yeah, that's a luxury, not a problem. That is not a problem. That really good teams don't need their top draft picks to produce. N'Keal Harry was a healthy scratch for the Patriots multiple games last year. He was a first-round pick and not even a second-round pick like Epinesa.
Yeah, it happens.
Young guys develop. And, hey, guess what? While Epinesa was inactive, Trent Murphy had a badass game and collapsed the pocket multiple times with a sack and like 3 or 4 flash plays. He did just fine.
Yeah, the defensive line was fine with Epinesa. And to compare it to other rookies at different positions, not understanding the depth of those positions, I don't know. It's crazy to me. He'll be fine. I'm not worried about his development. Take his time. We've got good guys that are vets there. I have zero concerns about that.
Yeah, I believe as how did the right side of the offensive line look to you guys? I didn't count any like one-on-one defeat sacks. And there were 3 sacks on the game that were given up. All 3 of them were either Josh scrambling or coverage sacks after a while. And I joked early on, there were multiple plays where he had 7+ seconds in the pocket, just sitting there hanging out. The run game didn't get going too much, which I would like to see them do more, but I'll reserve judgment for next week to see if we can take advantage of the Dolphins like the Patriots did running the ball. But I thought they looked fine. I didn't see any problems. I didn't see any major issues. I thought they looked fine. Anything?
May came through. A couple of times, Danny on blitzes, which that's hard. That might be on. I'll have to talk to Eric on that one. That might be on Josh. Yeah, for sure. And he's going to catch it sometimes, and that's just going to happen. That might be on Josh, too, not reading it pre-snap and communicating it to the line. I don't know where the communication breakdown there is, but he did come through clean a couple times, so I can't put that on the line broadcast view.
Yeah. For linebacker depth, we touched on it a little bit earlier in the show, but there's definitely going to be some questions coming up here. Aaron pointed out that we had Darren Lee in for a workout. I would assume that we see a callback for either Corey Tompsett or Voshon Joseph. We don't know the severity of any of these injuries, but I'm gonna predict that Matt Milano does not play next week. If
They'll
it's a
bodies at practice, at least. There'll be bodies brought up for practice this week.
So we need to wait and see what happened with D'Alshon Phillips, what happened with Terrell Dodson, and most importantly, what happened with Tremaine Edmonds. So bringing in linebackers for workouts, adding people to the practice squad is an inevitability. We're going to see names come up here, but otherwise we'll have to see where that goes from there.
Yeah.
I had a couple other good questions here, and one of them was I got to find it, but one of the guys that flashed or had some questions about that Zimmer kid, I thought he looked great.
Yeah.
For a guy that I expected nothing from, he collapsed the pocket multiple times. And with Vernon Butler out for the game, I was a little nervous that maybe they were going to be able to run the ball on us. I thought Harrison Phillips looked good too, but I expected nothing out of Justin Zimmer, and he flashed 3 different times for me.
Yeah, I wasn't even sure, when I saw him on the active, I was like, well, that's nice, but not that he'll get a ton going today. But yeah, no, he flashed a few times for me. So good for him, man. And if that's an indication of what type of depth that he can bring, what a luxury for the Bills to have when Vernon Butler's back. The depth of the line was already good before I even knew that kid's name. So if he's also going to play at that level, man, fantastic. I cannot wait to see more from him because he looked pretty good. He looked the part, and you want to see more of that.
Yeah. So for anybody who was throwing dirt on the Patriots, and we did caution not to do that, they still have Bill Belichick. They won by double digits today. So at 21-11, it wasn't an amazing game from what I could see, but they ran for 200 yards and won by 10. So the Patriots certainly are not gone by any means.
No, yeah, that stuff's crazy. The NFL, I'll believe it when I see it. When good teams aren't good anymore, we'll see at the end of the year.
Yeah. And Nick, you're not wrong. I don't think very many people were wildly aware that Justin Zimmer was on this roster, but good for him. So we can figure out where that's going to go. Any final thoughts for today that we want to leave the folks with here before we sign off?
Well, we didn't do player of the game.
Okay.
So that's something I would like to talk about because I think it's Josh Allen, obviously. We're not going to get, I think we'll agree there. It's hard to take away from a career day for the kid, even with the fumbles, which is crazy. Because when I saw those fumbles,
career best game with 2 fumbles. Yeah.
And when I saw those fumbles, I was like, man, I'm going to have to look elsewhere today. But I think he solidified that. But I think some honorable mentions are in consideration here. I think I might get killed for this. I'm really glad I'm not on Twitter to get killed over this. I think Brian Daboll would be in consideration for a game ball today. And then I think you'd also have to consider both Stephon Diggs and John Brown as getting game. If Josh Allen it wasn't his first 300-yard game, I think that you would consider both those guys as game balls. So good job by the offense. But I think I would like Brian Daboll to get more credit than he gets. Every time we get in the I see 1 or 2 people telling me in the comments that he's got to go. He's no good. He's a good football coach, guys.
He's going to be a head coach somewhere next year.
He's going to be a head coach. And if he gets more Josh Allen 300-yard passing games, he's going to be a head coach. He'll be one of the first guys to be a head coach in the next offseason. So he's a good football coach. I'm happy to have him. I thought he had a really nice day today.
Yeah, just wait until fans see that Joe Douglas came to his senses fires Adam Gase. Brian Daboll goes to New York and then fixes Sam Darnold. Let's see how many people are hating on him then after that happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a quick shout out for a couple other people. Obviously, I agree. Josh Allen 100% is the player of the game. I love the game from both Diggs and Brown. On the defensive side, Jordan Poyer had a really nice game.
Yeah, he did.
Forced that fumble, was all over the field. And a quick shout out. I thought that Terrell Dodson held his own after Edmonds went out. Didn't look terrible, got a sack, was around the field. And what you heard in training camp, that he was, being able to understand where all those different movements going, and his, play dissection skills were up there and getting a lot of attention. I thought he looked all right. I didn't think that was a huge gap, and he was probably holding his own when he went out, is where I was a little bit nervous about the last line of defense. And I think we just went a lot of dime after that with AJ Klein as the only linebacker.
I wanted to hear you talk about Trent and Ellen Murphy one more time, because he had a good game, and people are still mad that he's on this team and starting. So I want to also mention that he had a nice game.
Yeah. Trent Murphy, Mario Addison, 2 tackles for a loss and a sack. Trent Murphy had a sack. 3 sacks by this defense, a nice performance. So awesome in the chat today, guys. You were fantastic. Big thanks to Uncle Jumbo's, our presenting sponsor, and our first post game show being sponsored by West Her with their drive of the game. Appreciate it. All the good things going on here at Cover One. We appreciate it. If you're not in there, make sure you're signing up to be part of the Slack channel. It was awesome today during the game. It's your own little bubble of informed, intelligent Bills discussion. It's so much fun on game day. It's probably never better than on game day when everybody's going back and forth. It's such a good time, and really encourage you guys to check that out. Find us at cover1.net. Wherever you're listening to this, give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review, subscribe to the game, whatever you can do. Tell other fans, tell other people in your life about the show, and share what we have going on. It's going to be a great season, and we're hoping to be a big part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right on the Slack channel, man. I'm actually looking forward to the rest of the night of football, because it's not just Bills games. It's everything football. It's so much fun. And I was really worried right before the kickoff. I missed Twitter, because that's a fun time to be on Twitter. And during the game, I was like, man, I'm going to miss it. But I didn't miss it at all. The guys in the Slack channel, it was just like hanging out with all your friends, watching the game. So very happy that community exists, and it's a place where I can safely talk Bills without it being totally toxic.
Absolutely. Ron could not be more spot on. There's nothing better than a victory Monday. Wear your Bills gear proudly. Tell everybody all about it. Go watch the rest of football knowing that the Bills can at worst be tied for the division lead. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.